Royal Romances, Empress Alexandra and Mystic Rasputin. Part 1. Desperate for a Miracle. Empress Alexandra felt the first pangs of labor at 1 in the morning and woke up her husband, Emperor Nicholas II. Dr. Ott, the obstetrician, and his assistants were alerted immediately. They had moved into the palace in October of 1895, a month prior to the Empress's due date. In no time, they were gathered in the birthing chamber set up right in the palace. The medical team was skilled and experienced, but Nikki and Alex, that's what the royal couple was called in the family, like any parents-to-be, were on edge. They hoped their firstborn would be a boy, because in Russia only a male could inherit the throne. Daughters did not count. Nikki immediately sent for his mother, Dowager Empress Maria, who arrived within an hour. Nikki's sister Ksenia also came over to support Alex. Together, the women gently rubbed Alex's back and legs and said prayers. Alex was only 23, but she was not in great shape. She had long suffered from sciatica and leg pain, which flared up during her pregnancy. Because of those ailments and constant nausea, she spent the last months in bed or in a wheelchair. After 20 hours of labor, there was still no sign of the baby, and Dr. Ott decided to use forceps. His efforts were successful. The newborn girl had black hair and blue eyes. She was named Olga, Nikki's sister Ksenia wrote. "A great joy, although it's a pity it's not a son. The baby is huge, weighing 10 pounds, and had to be pulled out with forceps. A terrible thing to witness, but thank God everything ended well." Alex remained bedridden for more than 2 weeks and then moved back into the wheelchair. Because of the difficult delivery and a lengthy convalescence, rumors spread all over Europe that the Russian Empress was quite ill, required surgery, and would not be able to have more children. The rumors were not true. Before Olga's birth, there had been some worries among the royals that Alex could be infertile because her older sister Ella was childless. But now the Empress had proved that despite her nausea, back pain, and headaches, she was able to produce a healthy baby. The slight disappointment that the firstborn was not a boy quickly gave way to joy. In celebration, Nikki issued an amnesty and sent alms to the poor. In Petersburg, church bells rang and cannons fired 101 times. This number was for a royal daughter. Next time, for a son, there would be a salvo of 301 shots. This next time happened 2 years later, but the cannons again stopped at 101. After another difficult pregnancy, Alex gave birth to the couple's second daughter. This time, the disappointment was more pronounced. Nikki's great-uncle wrote, "I was informed by telephone that their majesties had been blessed with another daughter. The news soon spread. Everyone was disappointed, as they had been hoping for a son." Well, not everyone, Nikki recorded in his diary. "The second bright, happy day in our family. At 10:40 in the morning, the Lord blessed us with a daughter, Tatiana. Poor Alex suffered all night without shutting her eyes for a moment. Thank God this time it all went quickly and safely, and I did not feel emotionally drained." Alex and Nikki loved being parents. Before the birth of their first child, they moved out of the capital and settled in Tsar's village, 15 miles away. There, Alex tried her best to isolate herself and her family from the hustle and bustle of St. Petersburg's social life. Because of her haughty attitude and reclusiveness, Alex, despite holding the highest imperial rank, was not liked at court. The nobles missed Alex's predecessor, Dowager Empress Maria, who was charming, engaging, and made everyone feel like they were the center of her attention. Maria used to be the queen, literally and figuratively, of all the balls. She danced all night and into the morning, often outlasting her younger guests. She received endless visitors, presided over charitable events. In short, to use a modern word, she was a talented and tireless networker. Alex could not fill Maria's shoes, and frankly, she did not even try. To be fair, she and Nicky were married right after her arrival in Russia, and there was no time for her to socialize and make friends. After her marriage, Alex was reluctant to reach out to people. She had poor command of Russian and French, languages spoken at court, and her health issues kept her from participating in sports or being a good dancer. Needless to say, the courtiers were disappointed in her. Alex was able to strike a friendship with Nicky's sister, Grand Duchess Ksenia. She also became close with two sister princesses from Montenegro, Milica and Stana, who were married to Russian Grand Dukes and were known for their interest in the occult. This is what Ksenia's husband wrote about them. Milica and her sister Stana exercised a bad influence on the Empress. Superstitious, gullible, and easily excitable, the Montenegrins were easy prey for all sorts of foreign adventurers. It is true that the so-called Montenegrins were not popular at court, but let's not forget that Alex was not Miss Popularity either. The Empress preferred to live in her bubble with Nicky and the children and not be bothered by courtiers. Her grandmother, Queen Victoria, did not approve of Alex's attitude and shared some sage advice with her favorite granddaughter. There is no harder craft than our craft of ruling. I have ruled more than 50 years, and nevertheless, every day I think about what I need to do to retain and strengthen the love of my subjects. It is your first duty to win their love and respect. Alex did not think much of her grandmother's advice. You are mistaken, my dear grandmama. Russia is not England. Here, we do not need to earn the love of the people. The Russian people revere their czars as divine beings. As far as Petersburg society is concerned, that is something which one may wholly disregard. Alex's disregard of St. Petersburg society did not go without consequences. In the upper crust circles, she became known as the Hessian fly, a harmful pest that destroys crops. Hessian, of course, referred to Hesse, Alex's birthplace, a grand duchy in Germany whose entire population was less than the city of St. Petersburg. The Empress gave more reason for gloating when 2 years after the birth of her second daughter, she had a third girl, Maria. Nicky assured his wife that he was the happiest husband and father, but his great-uncle wrote, "And so there is no heir. The entire Russia will be disappointed by this news." After the birth of Alex's third daughter, the royal chancellery began to receive letters from all over the world with suggestions on what the royal couple should do to conceive a male child. Some wanted to offer the secret for money. Others generously shared free advice. But the letters never reached Alex or Nikki. The couple sought solace and hope in churches and prayers. Alex, who used to be a Lutheran, had embraced Eastern Orthodoxy with unbridled passion. The walls of her rooms were covered with religious icons, and she lit candles and prayed endlessly for a son. Yet her prayers remained unanswered. In hindsight, maybe God was sparing the royals a greater pain and a fatal future. But Alex did not feel that way when she gave birth to her fourth daughter, Anastasia. The same great uncle wrote, "Forgive us, Lord, if we felt disappointment instead of joy. We were so hoping for a boy, and it is a fourth daughter." The disappointment quickly turned into ridicule. It was obvious that the Empress could not fulfill her main duty and produce an heir. People snickered, but no one really worried about the future of the empire. According to the law of succession, if the emperor did not have a son, the throne went to the next Romanov male in line, and there were plenty of them. Nikki had a younger brother, Michael, not to mention numerous uncles and cousins. The thought that the crown could go to another family branch was anathema to both Nikki and Alex. Nicholas inquired if the laws could be changed so that his eldest daughter, Olga, would inherit the throne. Alex, on her part, insisted that Nikki's brother should not be called the heir, but simply the successor. She believed that God may not grant her a son if there were an official heir. Alex's nerves had never been strong, but with all the stress, she was often on the verge of hysterics. Despised and scorned by everyone except her husband and the two Montenegrins, Alex withdrew from the public eye even more, which in turn gave food for more rumors and animosity. Alex prayed and cried. There seemed to be no end to this vicious circle. Alex's prayers seemed to have been answered when Militsa, who lived only a few miles away, introduced the royal couple to a famous mystic and healer. My friends, do you think it was Grigory Rasputin? No, not yet. The mystic's name was Monsieur Philippe. He was born on a small farm in the south of France, and at the age of 14 moved to Lyon to live with his uncle, a butcher. The boy knew early in life that he had a special gift of healing the sick, and he began helping people with prayers and seances. My friends, let me remind you that in the beginning of the 20th century, the world was swept by scientific and technological discoveries such as electricity, telephone, and telegraph, to name a few. So the logic was, if you could talk to a person far away, why couldn't you talk to the spirits of the dead? In America, Ouija boards were flying off the shelves, and Edison wondered about a device to communicate with the spirits. In England, Queen Victoria held seances to connect with her dead husband. And in the White House, First Lady Mary Todd Lincoln tried to contact her son, who had died from typhoid fever. In Lyon, the news of the young Master Philippe, who healed the sick with prayer and magnetism, that was the word for hypnotism, was spreading all over France. Healing was not Master Philippe's only gift. He could also see into people's past lives, diagnose them at a distance, and predict the future. So many wanted to see him that he began performing in front of crowds, and afterwards many claimed that they felt better or were totally cured. Yet Master Philippe had his share of critics, especially in the medical field. In France, it was illegal to practice medicine without a diploma, and Philippe was tried several times for breaking the law. In official circles, he was considered a charlatan, but lawsuits against him eventually stopped because the plaintiffs realized that even bad publicity was bringing Philippe more clients. Russian nobility spent a lot of time in France, and one day, the healer was introduced to Grand Duchess Militsa. Her son, Roman, had weak lungs, and though there is no evidence, it is possible that Philippe attempted to cure him. If it is true, he was quite successful because Roman lived a long life and died at the age of 82. But back to Militsa. She, of course, knew about Alex's distress. And here was Master Philippe performing miracles left and right. Militsa did not have to think twice. When the healer paid a visit to Russia, she introduced him to Alex. The royal couple was quite taken by the French mystic. They began to see Master Philippe daily, sometimes twice a day, and they called him our friend. They even cut short a visit to the theater to spend more time with him. Nikki wrote, July 10th, Monsieur Philippe talked and instructed us. What a wonderful few hours. July 11th, our friend was sitting with Alex and talking to her. We showed him our daughters and prayed together in the bedroom. July 15th, we returned home from the theater after the second act and immediately went to see our friend, with whom we sat until 2:30 in the morning. Nikki's dry diary entries were now punctuated with exclamation marks. Alex, too, could not get enough of the mystic and wrote to her husband, How rich life is since we know him, and everything seems easier to bear. Indeed, Philippe had given the royal couple what they needed most, hope that they would have a son. The emperor was so grateful, he had the Medical Military Academy issue Philippe a medical degree. And that was not all. The unlicensed French healer was also awarded the rank of state councillor and general, and on top of that, he was appointed inspector of the medical service corps. Wow! I want to remind you, my friends, that Nicholas himself was just a colonel, so Philippe way outranked the emperor. All these orders were kept under tight wraps and were never published. Nikki knew what the real generals would think if they learned about their new French brother-in-arms. Philippe, however, was still aggravated by the fact that his talent had not been officially recognized in his own country. To jolly up their new friend, Nicholas appealed to French authorities to issue Philippe a medical license. The emperor's request was considered at the highest level. Neither the French president nor the foreign minister could imagine why the Russian monarch was petitioning for this charlatan and magnetizer. He should be performing at the circus and village fairs. The government responded that French laws could not be circumvented and that even a person with a very respectable Russian diploma had to take 3 examinations to receive a medical license. Perhaps Nikki wished he could have told the French president why he had petitioned for Master Philippe. By fall of 1901, a few months after meeting the French healer, Alex was pregnant again. This time, she knew for sure. It was a boy. Philippe warned her to stay away from the doctors. They were dealing with ethereal matters, and doctors with their poking and prodding could easily upset the delicate balance. Alex loved nothing more than keeping secrets from her family. As a matter of fact, The royal couple's closest relatives did not know that she was pregnant until the spring of 1902. By then, her belly had grown considerably and she stopped wearing a corset. Alex wrote to Ksenia, her sister-in-law. "It begins to be difficult to hide. I feel so well, thank God. My broad waist must have struck you all winter long." The couple's secrecy about Master Philippe had instigated so many rumors that Ella, Alex's older sister who lived in Moscow, came for a chat. Alex was ready. She wrote to Nikki. "We drove around the park, and during that time Ella assailed me about our friend. I remained very quiet and gave dull answers, especially after she said she wanted to get to the bottom of it. She has heard many very unfavorable things about him, and that he is not to be trusted." Alex brushed off Ella's concerns. She and Nikki were not keeping any secrets. How could they, with so many people around? Everyone was just nosy and jealous. Alex managed to steer the conversation away from the seances. Those would have been harder to explain. Then she concluded, "I am sure my answers are most unsatisfactory to her. Let us just hope that she won't begin again." In August, Dr. Ott and his assistants came to the palace in anticipation of the upcoming birth. The due date came and went. Days went by and nothing happened. The doctor found it odd that the Empress did not look pregnant and led a lifestyle unsuitable for an expecting mother. Every night, around 11, Alex left to see Grand Duchess Militsa and did not return until 3 in the morning. Dr. Ott asked to examine the Empress, but she declined and said, "Do not worry, the baby is there." Then, one day, out of the blue, Dr. Ott was summoned to the Empress's room. He immediately noticed that she had bloodstains on her shirt. Both Alexandra and the Emperor looked worried. Nicholas asked that Dr. Ott examine his wife. The exam showed that the Empress was not pregnant. Had it been a phantom pregnancy induced by the ministrations of Master Philippe? Not quite. Dr. Ott's diagnosis was molar pregnancy, a rare condition when the fertilized egg did not develop. It attached to the lining of the uterus and stayed there, causing symptoms similar to pregnancy. The abnormal tissue could have turned cancerous, but in Alexandra's case, it did not, and just lingered in her womb until it was flushed out. Ksenia wrote, "This morning Alex had a minor miscarriage, if it could be called a miscarriage at all. That is to say that a tiny ovule came out." The court was in more shock than the Empress herself. How does one explain this to the public? There had been an official announcement that Her Majesty was expecting. Then a bulletin stated that Alexandra had suffered a miscarriage. A miscarriage after a 9-month pregnancy? What had really happened, and where was the baby? Everyone immediately recalled the famous lines from a fairy tale written by Russia's beloved poet Alexander Pushkin. "Your Tsarina, sire, last night was delivered of a fright. Neither son nor daughter, nor have we seen its like before." The fright delivered by the Empress was rumored to be a monster with horns. Alex could not stop crying, but despite the pain and the shame of this unprecedented fiasco, the royal couple continued to believe in Philippe's magical powers and went to see him. Nikki wrote, Our friend spoke beautifully and made us forget our anguish. What exactly did Philippe say to make the grieving parents forget their anguish? Did he predict that despite all the hurdles, Alex would still have a son? The pressure from the family and the government had reached such a crescendo that Nikki had to let Philippe go. Alex was desolate. Before leaving, the healer gave her an icon with a bell, which was supposed to ring when an evil-meaning person approached her. Another gift from Philippe were dried flowers, which, he said, had been touched by the Savior himself. Alex had the flowers framed and kept them in her bedroom all her life. On seeing how distraught she was, Philippe assured her that someday she would have another friend like him, and he would speak to her of God. He also told Alex to pray to Saint Seraphim from the town of Sarov. And then he departed for France with his Russian medical diploma, a general's military uniform, and gifts which included a Serpollet motor car. 3 years later, the healer died in his house in Lyon. Alex was eager to pray to Saint Seraphim, but immediately discovered that such a saint did not exist. 70 years ago, there was a monk by the same name who lived in the Sarov monastery, but though the man was truly holy, he was not recognized as a saint. Alex shared this predicament with her husband, and Nikki promptly ordered the church to canonize the monk. The church objected. "The emperor cannot give such orders." Full of anger, Alex retorted, "The emperor can do anything." And with that, the emperor's will was done. Before too long, the Romanovs boarded the royal train and set out to the town of Sarov, 600 miles from Petersburg, where Seraphim was to be canonized. After the celebrations, per Master Philippe's instructions, Nikki and Alex bathed in the cold waters of the local stream. Their pilgrimage was over. With hearts full of grace, the royals returned home. Within 3 months, Alex was pregnant. On July 30th, 1904, the bells rang non-stop and the cannons finally fired a salvo of 301 shots. Nikki and Alex were proud parents of a baby boy, a son they called Alexei. Alexandra, bless her heart, had fought a long and strenuous battle against her powerful Romanov relatives, against the narrow vision of the church, against all the naysayers and ill-wishers. But even an empress cannot win against fate. A week after Alexei's birth, Nikki wrote in his diary, "Alex and I were very worried because little Alexei started bleeding from the navel, and it continued on and off until the evening. Doctors were called. They applied a bandage, and the anxious parents prayed as they kept a vigil over the little one. But they already knew what it was: hemophilia, an incurable disease that Alex carried in her veins and passed on to her son. In one instant, she had given him life and condemned him to death. A miracle was needed to bring Alexei into this world. Now they needed one to keep him alive. Was another miracle too much to ask?"
Dear friends, this is Elena Pavlova, the author and producer of Royal Romances. Thank you for watching and listening. If you enjoyed this show, please give it great reviews, share it with others, and post about it on social media. Subscribe to learn about upcoming episodes and listen to the Royal Romances podcast on all platforms. You can also visit www.royalromances.com for more stories and pictures. I look forward to hearing from you. Be well.